What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and today we're going to get into my favorite trade targets and buys and sells for week 3 of fantasy football. Now, this is my favorite part of the NFL week because we're in a spot where there's the trade calculators, the trade value charts, all that good stuff isn't updated yet. So if you want to make moves or you want to make trades early in the week like this, you kind of have to have the conviction, to go out there and say, I don't care what consensus says. I have my guy. I'm going to go out there and trade him. And when you do that, you can get a discount if you have that conviction to not wait for consensus. Now, with that being said, we're going to get into that in a second. Make sure you go down below, subscribe, and leave a like. We're going to be putting out daily content to help you guys win your fantasy championships from now through December. Let's go.
Thirsty, trying to choose. I know I'm critical. My nitty bag.
So I didn't go over the format of how we're doing this, but we're going to cover a few buy candidates, then we're going to cover a few sell candidates on the back half of this video. And first up, for these buys, we're going to have this overarching theme of we want to be buying these young studs, players that are good, that we know are good, haven't met expectations to this point. But because they're young and we know they're good, there isn't much fear or risk of them being old and washed and kind of regressing. Now with A.J. Brown, we know this man is a monster. He is the wide receiver 45 on the season right now, and a lot of owners are panicked. And the thing is that I've been a big believer. If you watch the Ron Stewart Fantasy Football channel, we believe in talent over everything. A.J. Brown, we know, is talented. I've been seeing people, in my DMs and my comments panicking on D.J. Brown. Guys, this is a stud wide receiver that we saw last year be the wide receiver 6 in points per game as a second-year player. That doesn't just happen to random players. That happens to studs, and we follow the volume here. With A.J. Brown, he's been getting the volume. So you keep on betting on that. On Sunday, he saw 9 targets, and he's maintained this 23% target share ahead of Julio Jones as the wide receiver 1 in this offense. And he's also getting valuable targets. So he's getting a lot of them. He's getting a decent target share. And he's top 5 in end zone targets and air yards. So he's getting a lot of targets in the end zone where he can score touchdowns and a lot of targets downfield, which means that the efficiency is bound to bounce back. Those are areas of the field where you are getting efficient targets because the more air yards you have on a target, the more implied points you get when you catch it. And obviously end zone targets, you can score a touchdown on those. This is an efficient player. A.J. Brown has always been efficient. Across the board, efficiency isn't super sticky, right? But A.J. Brown has proved that he is an anomaly in that category. He was second in yards per route run as a rookie, and he was second in yards per route run as a sophomore. He is somebody that no matter how much volume you give him, he will make the most of that volume. And this offense is finally starting to click. The Titans just put up 33 points against the Seahawks in a shootout, and we just saw Derrick Henry have his homecoming game where he went absolutely crazy. And we're going to see teams start stacking the box because they want to stop the big dog, and they're going to put 8 guys in the box, and that's going to open things up for A.J. Brown to go crazy. For me, A.J. Brown is a strong hold, and I'd be buying him everywhere. If some of the owners in your league are spooked, you need to go send offers for him because we know he's a monster. He's still a firm top 12 wide receiver for me. He's somebody that I'm buying in every league, and he also plays the Colts, the Jets, and the Jaguars in his next 3 weeks. He is going to absolutely shred one of those defenses up, and it could be the Colts as soon as this Sunday. Then we have the same thought exercise here with DK Metcalf, another young, talented wide receiver out of Ole Miss, who was a wide receiver 1 as a second-year player. He's off to a slow start, like A.J. Brown. He's the wide receiver 34 through 2 weeks in PPR leagues. But again, we got to follow the volume. The efficiency is going to bounce back when we have players that we know are good, and through 2 weeks, this man, A.J. Brown, is 5th in target share at 30%. I can't explain how crazy 30% target share is. A lot of people are going to tell you that Tyler Lockett's the wide receiver 1. First of all, I can't stress this enough, fellas. It doesn't matter who is the wide receiver 1. If Lockett has 31% of the target share and Metcalf has 29% of the target share, it doesn't matter. It literally doesn't matter. As long as both of them are getting in a crazy amount of volume, that is all that matters. People get so hung up on like wide receiver 1 versus wide receiver 2 in a certain offense. My question is, are they both getting wide receiver 1 type volume? Then it doesn't matter. Because when we're talking about wide receiver 1, we're talking about a top 12 fantasy wide receiver, not what team he's on. DK Metcalf getting a 30% target share. One, he's matching Tyler Lockett, so it doesn't matter. They're both, top wide receivers in that offense. And a 30% target share is huge for Tyler Lockett. That would have been second behind Devontae Adams last year. And it's also huge because it's a massive improvement on his 24.1% target share last year. Obviously, this isn't going to stick. He's not going to maintain a 30% target share, but he's going to see probably an improvement from last year, which is big because DK Metcalf won last year on efficiency, on long targets, and touchdowns. For him to hit in 2021 like we want him to hit and have this like big smash, it comes from volume. It's going to come from him having a higher target share than that 24% number, and it looks like he's trending towards that. Now, again, this efficiency is going to bounce back. He is in an offense with Russell Wilson. I can't stress enough. Russell Wilson is pretty much the tide that lifts all boats or all sails, whatever the saying is. Russell Wilson has had one of the highest yards per target, touchdown rate, all of that good stuff among all quarterbacks from the last 5 years. He is elite in those efficiency categories, and what that does is it helps his wide receivers become monsters in fantasy. So right now we have Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf both neck and neck in targets, but Tyler Lockett has produced much more. Now I just want to say there's a Spider-Verse out there where the roles are reversed. They have the same amount of volume, but DK Metcalf has 2 monster games and Lockett gets left behind. The NFL is such a small sample. It is literally just 2 weeks. If you play those 2 weeks out 20 times, I'm telling you, there's different scenarios where, like I said, DK Metcalf has his and Tyler Lockett has the same amount of targets, but he's producing a step behind from what DK Metcalf is doing. Now, I think DK Metcalf gets up to speed very soon here. The efficiency is going to bounce back. This is a guy who gets targets in the end zone, far down the field, and the production is going to be on the way. This is another offense that I'm a fan of. Waldron has been running a great offense thus far through 2 weeks. They're top 10 in scoring. We now have Metcalf and Lockett at both 30% target share, so he's not giving targets. He's not giving out empty targets to guys like Will Dissly and Freddie Swain. Well, he is, but not to a point where it's to the offense's detriment. And if you have an owner in your league that is wavering on DK Metcalf, go send an offer. He is another firm wide receiver 1 for me rest of season. I haven't moved off of that, and he's playing the Vikings this week. This is one of the highest over-unders on the slate, and they're allowing the 3rd most points to opposing wide receivers. I wouldn't be surprised if DK Metcalf is one of my starts of the week at wide receiver. Then moving on, we're going to get to Jonathan Taylor, who kind of fits into the same mold of being a young stud. He's a year 2 running back, and I do understand the disappointment here. He has no touchdowns. He has 3.3 yards per carry. He's the RB23 in PPR right now. He just put up 6.3 points this week. So there's a lot to be upset about with Jonathan Taylor, but I can't stress this enough. Relax when it comes to Jonathan Taylor. He just came off of a game against literally Aaron Donald, the defensive player of the year, the past, I don't know how many, like 1, 2, 3 years. But in my opinion, when you look at Jonathan Taylor's profile, there's actually a lot to like when we dig a little bit deeper. And the main pillar of that is that he's been extremely unlucky, which is good because he's going to bounce back in the regression department. And the kind of unluck or the kind of bad luck that he's seen is crazy. According to Mike Clay, he has 3.3 expected touchdowns so far and 6 carries inside of the 5. Now, expected touchdowns are just based on, his down and distance and carries at the goal line and how many total yards he has. How many touchdowns should he have? He is supposed to have 3.3. He has 0 as of now. He leads the league in expected touchdowns and carries inside the 5. He's just been very unlucky. The crazy part is that now let's say that he scores as many touchdowns as he was expected to. So let's say he scores 3 touchdowns. Now remember, this isn't, over expectation. This isn't under expectation. This is just the mean outcome of how many yards he has, how many goal line carries he has, just an average outcome of all of those variables. He would have 3 touchdowns. If he had 3 touchdowns right now, he would be the RB4 in PPR formats. Let that sink in. That's crazy. Just because of his bad luck, he is now at RB23. They're not going to pull goal line carries away from him. They have nobody else there. Jonathan Taylor is this big bruising back. I imagine that these things are going to be fine. I think that he just got unlucky through the first 2 weeks. He is still firmly, I cannot stress this enough, firmly a top 7 running back for me in fantasy rest of season. Now, let's address the negative of his profile right now, and that's his lack of usage in week 2. And this is where there's some cause for concern, and I think this is where the buying opportunity comes out of, and it's that he went from a 55% snap share and 24 opportunities to a 45% snap share and 16 opportunities. And this was mainly because Marlon Mack. Marlon Mack in the first game played no snaps at all. Then he came in this week, played 19% of the snaps, and had 6 touches. And the question is, should we be concerned? For me personally, I'm not all that concerned. I think that they were struggling against a good defense with the Rams. I think that they were kind of just throwing the kitchen sink at Aaron Donald. Jonathan Taylor isn't working out. Let's give Marlon Mack a crack at this, see if we can ride the hot hand out against a very good run defense. And the good thing is that Marlon Mack did nothing. On 5 carries, he averaged 3.2 yards per carry. I think most weeks Marlon Mack probably won't see the field almost at all, if at all. So for me, Jonathan Taylor is still a top 7 running back rest of season, and I'd be buying off of any owners that are kind of scared off by what he's done so far. Then we have a bonus in DeAndre Swift, and I think that he fits that scheme so well of buying a stud. If you want to know why he's a young stud, I have like 3 different videos where I explain why he's such a great talent, prospect, all that good stuff. He's coming off a somewhat disappointing week, so I think you can maybe buy low on him. He only got 12 touches. He put up 11.8 PPR points per game. People are kind of frustrated on the timeline from what I saw. And even if they're not, I wanted to start referencing this Reddit trade value chart because it seems to be a chart that a lot of people use, and he is way too low on it. He is insanely low. Week 3's chart is going to come out today when you guys see this video, but I'm just going off of week 2's chart. And because he didn't have a pop-off game this week, he's not going to get moved up crazy high. They have him in this range with Mike Evans and Miles Sanders. I think that's wrong. For me, if we did a draft again today, he would probably be around the 212 to 301 for me, which would put him firmly, ahead of David Montgomery on this chart and probably right behind that Gibson, Eckler, Saquon range. So you're getting some crazy value. The kid is a stud. He leads all running backs in targets. He's the RB6 in PPR. If you can buy him for the price on this trade value chart, I would do that every single time. The market is not adjusting quick enough to DeAndre Swift's talent. And you guys should do this. Go through this Reddit trade value chart. It's going to come out tomorrow. I'll try to link it either in the comments or the description. But this is a good thing to do where you can look through these Reddit trade value charts that a lot of like league mates and use, and you can kind of, show them the chart or whatever if you want to. And you can kind of spot guys that you are higher or lower on than the chart, and you can use that as a buy or sell opportunity. And that's kind of the idea here with Chris Carson. They have him, which is insane to me. They have him in the same tier as Amari, Keenan Allen, CeeDee Lamb, Darren Waller. And I'd personally have him lower in maybe that tier with, Josh Jacobs and Adam Thielen. I'd take guys like Swift, Godwin, McLaurin, Cooper Kupp, Amari Cooper, Keenan Allen, CeeDee Lamb over Chris Carson all day. And you guys probably ask me why. Chris Carson has kind of been great so far, and I just don't love running backs like Chris Carson where there's not much receiving upside, which is huge in PPR, and he's going to get stuck as like a fringe RB1 for the rest of the season, and I'd rather just have a better asset with more upside. And with Chris Carson, he has 3 targets through 2 games. Like I said, there's not a lot of receiving upside there. That's tied with guys like Ty Johnson and Amir Abdullah. He has a similar profile. He's kind of like an expensive Josh Jacobs. He has a very similar profile to Josh Jacobs where he's not getting a lot of the receiving work. He's just getting between the tackles touches, and he's going to score touchdowns here and there. I also think that this is a perfect opportunity to sell Chris Carson because he kind of got bailed out of a bad performance. He had 13 carries for 31 yards, 0 targets, but he had 2 touchdowns on the day. So that bailed him out of a bad performance. So people in your league that are going to look at the box score or just the fantasy output, that becomes a very easy sell to somebody else because it looks like Travis Homer is taking over the third down duties. Like I said, if this trade target or this trade value chart, it shouldn't change on Chris Carson. He didn't have a bad week that would move him way down the trade value chart. So if you can get him at this price on this chart, I would do that all day. For our second sell of the week, we're going to go over face planners. These are 2 guys in particular. We're talking about Henry Ruggs and Michael Pittman. And preseason, I wasn't high on them at all. They qualify in my process as face planners. Now, we get way into detail in the dynasty season, all that good stuff on what face planners actually are. But long story short, pretty much wide receivers that struggle in year 1 rarely end up becoming fantasy producers. Only 13 of 125 face planners in my database have ever returned a top 24 season. I will bet against those odds every single time. Now we have an instance where we kind of have a sell opportunity for these face planners where Pittman and Ruggs both finished in the top 15 wide receivers this week in PPR. Now, let's go over them one by one. Let's go with Henry Ruggs real quick. Is he for real? To me, no. Obviously, I don't think that either of these guys are for real. But with Ruggs, I think that, yes, he put up big numbers on a long catch against the Steelers. The problem is that he's third on this team in targets behind Hunter Renfrow. He only has a 13% target share, and we're really aiming for 20% plus with these wide receivers if we want them to return, top 24 type value. Now, with Henry Ruggs, I completely expect him to, pop off. He's going to have his games where he's going to go for, 4 for 100 and a touchdown. The problem is that it's going to be extremely hard to time those when we have a guy that is so inconsistent week to week in terms of getting volume and commanding targets. Then we have Michael Pittman, who he actually looked good. He commanded 12 targets this week. He's at like a 21% target share. Here's the problem. He had only 4 targets in week 1, and I wasn't somebody that was high on him as a prospect. He was a bad prospect and a face planner. A lot of those guys don't end up producing well in the NFL. So for me, I'm not saying these guys are, guys that are 100% not going to be great. I just don't see an upside scenario where either of these guys bury you in fantasy football and are like top 15, top 12 producers. So I love them as bundle pieces. You know, you take a Henry Ruggs, you take a Michael Pittman, maybe you package it up with a Chris Carson. You go Chris Carson and Michael Pittman, and you pay up and you go grab Saquon, Jonathan Taylor, Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, AJ Brown, DK Metcalf. You do something like that. I like them as a bundle piece to, just kind of slap that onto one of your players and go move up and get a stud. Then last up, we're going to go over a quick little tight end. I didn't really want to put a tight end on here, but Rob Gronkowski is the tight end 2 in PPR formats with 4 touchdowns. I'd almost call it irresponsible to not field offers for him. He is, like I said, the tight end 2, a guy who was getting drafted in the double-digit rounds. And I don't see this being sustainable where he's getting 4 touchdowns through 2 weeks. Like, I think that he'll probably be a back-end tight end 1, like a top 8 to 12 wide receiver or tight end, or, top 7 to 12 tight end. But he went from a 74% route participation rate in week 1 down to a 60% this week. And we're dealing with a very old Gronk that is probably going to take some weeks off. Not like take them off, but, mentally check out of these games, maybe, sub out early, because they want to preserve Gronk for the playoffs. This is going to be a team that's going to be playing an 17-game season while also really trying to win a Super Bowl. And they have 2 starting caliber tight ends in Cameron Brate and OJ Howard. These are guys that would be the tight end 1 on teams like the Jaguars and the Jets. Those are 2 skilled tight ends. So when you have Gronk, when he wants to save himself for the playoffs, he's going to have limited playing time. He's probably going to have a lot of reps where he's blocking in the formation. We're also going to see some touchdown regression where he's not going to score a touchdown every single week of the regular season. Now, like I said, I still think that Gronk is a back-end tight end 1, which is what you drafted him for. But if you have somebody out there that views Gronk as a top 5 tight end, a top 5 asset at tight end, I would be looking to sell high on him immediately. Now, that's going to do it for us today, fellas. As always, you can follow me at @Ronstore_ on Twitter. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you go down below, subscribe, and leave a like. We're gonna have our running back must start and sit video tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. Make sure you turn on the notification bell so you guys don't miss an upload. As always, I love you guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
Thirsty, trying to choose. I know I'm pretty cool. My nitty bag, my kitty boots. I got the juice,